Thank you, Walter. Yes, definitely. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this, and thank you for hosting this. Such a key, important kind of day to take a breath, and for those watching the recordings afterwards, just to refresh, like you said, our spirits in this dismal time of the year. But before I get started, if we can open in prayer, I have my favorite prayer book, like has been taped back together like 5 times. This is a mother's manual, very amazing book. But I thought we'd start with this prayer for a child's success in studies. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father of lights and of all true wisdom, we humbly recommend to you the success of our children in the pursuit of learning. Mercifully grant the measure of success that it will be good for them to achieve. And thus, may there be a genuine sense of fulfillment as a result of their efforts. May all knowledge attained be tempered by humility. Grant that our children's endeavors may always be guided by a sense of solid values and help us to instill these values. And so may all their striving for knowledge be made not with the aim of surpassing others or of making vain show of ability, but rather as a worthy return to you of the talents that you have bestowed. And above all else, we ask that every degree of knowledge achieved will bring our children to a greater closeness to you and to a more abundant share of your love. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. This is Mother's Manual by Frances Coombs, Coomes. And it's just love it, love it. So thanks for asking, Patricia. So amazing advice today. It's been beautiful to listen to the other speakers. And as Christy said, I think that we all are interconnected in what we were inspired to share today. And I'm just overjoyed that a lot of what was shared so far will also come back out in my talk. So it's just beautiful how the Holy Spirit works. And if you have not listened to all of the talks, please go back and do so, because there's such great wisdom, such great ideas and practical wise guidance in all of them. But to begin tonight, I would like you to think for a moment, whether you're watching live or you're on listen to the recording. I want you to think of 3 things that you could be doing right now instead of listening to this talk. 3 things you could be doing. Instead of talking to you, I could be folding the mountain of towels in my living room. I think there are 3 baskets full. I could finally be putting away the pile of stuff from my trip last weekend that I dropped on the table inside the door and haven't touched since. I could be giving my youngest child the haircut he so desperately needs, so he'll stop doing this. But what are 3 things you could be doing now? A little more serious, what are 2 things that aren't working so well in your homeschool right now? We all face challenges, right? What are 2 things that are just not working well? Identify those. I'll admit that we have had some bad attitudes during school time, not just mine. That's not going so well. And we are not getting through the work that the kids do with me. That's not working right now. I need to alter my schedule somehow. I'm not getting it done with them. Some of it, not all of it. So what are the 2 things not working well right now in your homeschool? And then one more question. What is one thing you really wanted to do today that isn't going to get done? I really wanted to take a short nap because I stayed up way too late last night reading a book that was at the end, and I wanted to see how it turned out. Did not get a nap. Really had no hope of nap. There's not enough time to do all these things, right? All the things that you just thought of, all the teaching and the cleaning and the cooking and the prepping and the loving. There's not enough time. Let's just sit with that for a moment and acknowledge the hard. But I have 3 more questions for you. And we're going to call upon God's grace, clear our heads for a moment, before we answer these. Now think of 3 things that you did well this week. What went well? I mostly patiently was able to explain complicated math to 2 very reluctant and resistant children. What did you do well? My husband and I were able to reward a child for consistent displays of responsibility with extra privileges, and that went over really well. And I spent quite a bit of time this week listening to my 2 college kids' struggles. But what did you do well? And next, what are 2 things that you love about homeschooling? We are all here because we are either wanting to homeschool or we are homeschooling, although some of us might not feel like we want to homeschool right now if we're feeling kind of dreary. But what are 2 things you love about homeschooling in particular? I love getting to know my kids so intimately and their personalities and their likes and dislikes. I love reading great stories with my kids. If we could just do that for everything and I could just read all day long, I'd lose my voice. I did try this. I would lose my voice. What are 2 things you love about homeschooling? And finally, what's one thing you love about your life right now? I love getting to help other moms homeschool. I love it. Just makes me feel alive. What do you love about your life right now? So if you notice, those 2 sets of questions were really different, right? And they made us feel differently. The trick is that too often we focus on what we are not doing, and we don't give ourselves credit for the things we are doing. And then we start asking ourselves, am I doing enough? Am I enough? Am I really supposed to even be homeschooling? These doubts are really common. Everybody in this room has had them. And it might be what brought you to the Refresh conference this day. Almost all homeschooling parents experience these feelings at some time, the doubt, the overwhelm, the burnout. We feel defeated. Often because we focus on what we can't do and we forget what God can do. Because let's be real, there's not enough time to do all the things we want to do. We want to provide our kids with the very best. We want to be the very best. We want to teach them all the things, help them experience life and the world. The good news is we don't have to be perfect to homeschool well, because obviously that's an impossible goal. As we're on this side of heaven, there is not perfection, very rarely perfection. We know this intellectually. We know by our faith that we are sinful. We have weaknesses and we know it, but we struggle with it emotionally sometimes and it brings us down. In my lifetime so far, I've run 3 home businesses. And each time I have done this, I struggle with the fact that I can always do more. Maybe you or your husband owns a business, or you have a family member and you know this struggle. I can always market more, provide more content, more products, more services. It's endless. But I also have to be a mom and a wife and homeschool. So I have to say no to doing more and more and more and more. Homeschooling is similar. There's an infinite amount of knowledge and skills that we could possibly teach our children. It's just impossible to teach it all, right? So we have to say no to some things in order to say yes to others. So if you're wondering if you're doing enough, you're asking the wrong question. The question are we doing the right things? There is not enough time to do all that we want to do. But since God is the creator of time, it must follow that we do have enough time to do all that he wants us to do. Some of the other speakers spoke of things like relationships and Patricia said high school, all the things that are super, super important, our faith. But to figure out God's will for our unique families, again, intellectually, we all know that we have to be close to him in prayer. So we're here today at this conference. We need refreshment, right? We're feeling weary. And some of us are wondering if we're really the best person to be educating our children. But I encourage you to remember what you already know, that God will work with anyone willing to cooperate with his grace. If he put the calling on your heart to homeschool, then he will provide all you need to educate them according to his will, to do all he wants us to do. It might not be how we envision it. It might not be what we want to do. In fact, it might look really different from that. But if we choose homeschooling through prayer and discernment, he will equip us to do his will. I've seen it and I've experienced it in my 17 years of homeschooling. Well, 16 and a half, whatever. When I'm exhausted, and this happens regularly, by all of the things, and I doubt my ability to keep going, when I turn to the Lord, I do find relief in God's merciful love. And so I invite you to do the same today because he's longing for us to reach out to him. He wants us to walk every step of every day close to him. When we are weary, when we are burned out, when we are struggling, the most important thing to do is not to do, it's to draw close to God in prayer. St. Padre Pio says, prayer is the key that opens the heart of God. And so to be close to his heart, we must pray. Now, busy family, crazy busy moms, we're doing all the things and we're not getting them all done. We've already agreed to that. So that might look like a quick prayer before our feet hit the floor, or a running dialogue of prayer in our heads amidst the chaos, or that coveted 5 to 15 minutes of quiet prayer early morning during nap time or at night. Whatever works in our current season. One of my very favorite ways to pray and to remind myself that prayer should be constant is aspirations, those quick one-line prayers. Jesus, I trust in you. Mary, be a mother to me now. But no matter what it looks like, our relationship with God is essential because God's grace alone can refresh our weary souls. So I'm going to stop and say for a moment, remember that our relationship with God is unique. Mine isn't going to look like yours. Yours isn't going to look like your neighbor's or anyone else's. But when we question if we are enough and we are close to the Lord, it's much easier to hear his voice when he says, you are enough. What you're doing is enough. And you're doing so many things right. Remember all those things you mentioned that you did well this week that are working right now for you. And there are so many more. I'm fairly confident that we aren't, I guess, behaving like those sluggish teen boys that Philip mentioned. You are providing your kids with food and clothes. They're clean. They have safe shelter. They get the sleep they need sometimes. They're loved by you. That's the most important thing. And they're learning some things sometimes too, right? Not the most important thing, the schoolwork. So stop doubting. This is my command too. Stop doubting if you're enough for your children. You are enough. How do I know this? Because God gave you to them and them to you. And his grace is always, always, always enough. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. I will all the more gladly boast of my weaknesses, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. It is in our brokenness and weakness that God can take over and work wonders and work magic things. And being their mom or dad is infinitely more important than all of these things we cannot get done. I think it was Jamie who said, we are that soft place to land. Our relationships are the most important things. We are human beings, not human doings, right? Okay. As I said, though, we have to remember that our enough is going to look different than someone else's enough. I like to remind moms, we can compare once and collect ideas that we can consider and evaluate and decide if they'll work for our family, but we can't dwell on comparisons and try to imitate others' actions or others' ideas. Because each person is created by God as unique and unrepeatable, right? Again, we know this. But when you add together a unique mother and a unique father and their unique children, it's going to look differently than any other family you know, any other homeschooling family you know, even if they have similar ages and genders and are similar in homeschooling approach as you. There are going to be differences. But we can't really dwell on the comparison and the um, what our homeschool looks like. Okay, so this is where we get stuck when we talk about, are we doing enough? Are we enough? My homeschool can't look like your homeschool if it's going to serve my children. We have this tremendous blessing and opportunity in homeschooling to basically tailor our kids' education to their unique needs. Now, we can't do that perfectly because there's a lot of them and only one of us, right? But if we're not doing it at all, if we're trying to do exactly what that homeschool mom, we'll just leave it as, as this vague, you know who you're thinking of. If we try to do it exactly the way she does it, it's not going to truly serve our family. I have kids whose strengths are reading and writing. One's majoring in English right now. I have kids whose strengths are science and math. That kid's majoring in engineering. I have introverts, and thank goodness God give me one extrovert to be my buddy. We have diagnosed and undiagnosed neurodiversities. And those are just my kids. That's not mentioning the strengths and struggles of me, of my husband. So, hard truth of homeschooling is we can't imitate the way another family homeschools or parents and expect it to work for us. But the good news is that you are the best teacher for your children because nobody loves them like you do. That's true. And God has selected you and prepared you for this work of parenting and homeschooling. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." You know your child better than anyone else. Your devotion to your children and your faith in God are enough to meet the needs of your unique family. We just have to be open to his will and his ways. And there's one more thing. We also have to do some work. Remember Noah? He had to cut the boards and hammer the nails or recruit help. He had to do the things. We got to do the things too. So I can sit here and wax eloquent about relying on God and we're doing enough. But when we feel really frustrated, when we are in a place where we are feeling burned out, there are some steps we can take, some work that we can do to climb out of that little by little. We can take baby steps to set aside our frustrations, to resolve some struggles and find more peace. But before I share some of those steps, let me say this. If you are listening to this and you are completely drained and you're struggling to get out of bed each day, I know some of you, if your feelings don't seem temporary, but they're causing severe disruption to your family life, please seek professional help. There are so many moms that are struggling really, really deeply. There's burnout that we can overcome through prayer and work. And then there's kind of that next level that needs outside assistance. But also, if you're thinking this isn't me, I don't really feel drained right now, I'm loving things, I would challenge you that a slight shift in attitude and a few small changes can keep the blues away when they inevitably come knocking. We're all going to hit challenges in life, and there are things we can do to guard ourselves against those. We can build the ark so that we can survive the flood. So let me just recap a little of what I said so far, because I want to summarize that that are two key points to battle this feeling of burnout. Obviously, one, we must pray. Yes, we must pray. Prayer is life-giving. Whatever kind of prayer works for you. We are Catholics, which means we understand there are different charisms in the church. There are Dominicans and Franciscans and Carmelites, right? And they all pray differently. So in our homes, it's okay if you don't get up before your kids and have that quiet time. I always have to tell moms that. That's okay. If you can do that and it works for you, do it. But it's okay if that's not what works. So pray, whatever works. And secondly, this mindset shift. We need to take ourselves from thinking of all the things that we aren't doing and acknowledge what we are doing. Sometimes we might need to write things on our to-do list that we already did and check them off to remind ourselves the many things that we are accomplishing. or add basic things to our list like eating and sleeping to recognize that those are accomplishments, right? You are eating and sleeping, right? A little. And then we also need to accept that our family is different than any other family, and we can't copy and paste what someone else is doing and expect it to work for us. So if we identify what makes our family unique, we name those struggles, we embrace them, we will have a better appreciation of what will lead us to success. And then finally, as was mentioned earlier, we need to keep in mind why we're homeschooling. Christy mentioned this. What is the whole purpose here? And then once we've focused on prayer, once we've thought through this mindset shift, then we need to do some work and take action. I teach a battle burnout challenge every spring with 4 categories of baby steps that we take to beat back burnout. And I give moms accountability on a weekly basis to make real progress that's customized for their unique families. So, the first thing we do is we evaluate mom's needs. We all have needs. Christy mentioned the psychological needs. I thought that was awesome. And through prayer, once we think of what are mom's needs that aren't being met, we choose one thing to implement regarding improving meeting mom's needs. It might be the sleep that you giggled at when I said you're getting sleep. It might be eating. It might be maybe you need nourished in other ways, time with friends, time with your husband. Um, there are lots of needs that we have that are just basic eating and sleeping and drinking enough water, prayer. Choosing one small step that we can take, that we can implement, that we can embrace and spend time to care for ourselves, true care, right? True self-care is super key to getting started on this path of recovering from burnout or preventing burnout from getting its hooks at us. The second thing we do is we evaluate our kids' basic needs. Our kids also need to eat and sleep and feel loved, right? And sometimes with all of our busyness and all of the things we're doing, we can forget some of those really key things. Philip talked about our teenagers and their needs to eat healthy food. Maybe that's a need in your family. Maybe it's not. But what are the needs? Do they have a consistent bedtime? Are you too busy outside of the house? Christy mentioned sometimes we're out and about too much. What are the kids' basic needs? And choose one. Each mom chooses one thing to try. Next, third is we simplify. We focus on either our housework or our homeschooling. What is something we can do to simplify in those areas, one thing, that will help us dig out of this hole, right? That might be as silly as using paper plates for a couple of weeks so we have fewer dishes to wash. Seems silly. Not silly when you're really struggling, right? Simplifying might look like just choosing those 4 R's. Jamie talked about this. If you're doing the reading, the writing, the arithmetic, the religion, and you can't get to those other subjects right now with your younger kids through part of middle school, that's okay. Seasons have to be flexible. And so we choose one thing, each mom chooses one thing that will help simplify her housework or her homeschooling. And that helps. These little things, they really do help. Small changes make a big difference. St. Therese says so. And then finally, number 4 is we plan for joy. Mamas, sometimes joy just doesn't happen naturally, especially when we're feeling grumpy and attitudes are grumpy. It's a struggle, right? But if we can plan for joy by scheduling a field trip that we really want to do, or maybe it's not an educational field trip, maybe we just want to go out and have some fun as a family, or maybe it's movie night, or maybe it's something mom needs to do to fill your cup, have coffee with a friend, take a phone call that you've been putting off that you know will nourish your spirit. These things, when we choose these little baby steps, often mean that we have to leave some things undone, right? We have to go to bed at night with things undone. It has to happen. You need sleep. We cannot function on 0 sleep. I've tried. No, maybe. So the key thing that I've learned and the key thing I teach is that we pick one change a week, one of these small things that we want to do each week for 4 weeks in each of those 4 categories. because I've learned there's no quick fix. I'm sorry. But when we take our time to implement changes, they do make a difference. Because if we try to change too much all at once, we're going to wake up tomorrow, it's all going to be different. We get frustrated because change isn't immediate. And that can only add to our feelings of burnout. In fact, you heard lots of wonderful guidance today, so many wise things that Jamie and Philip and Christy shared. But that can actually lead to more overwhelm because now your to-do list is longer, right? Don't go there. Okay. Baby steps that we can pick one small thing that we can implement tomorrow. In the book Atomic Habits, he teaches that if you make 1% change every day, which is kind of a lot actually, but just humor me. 1% change every day. By the end of a year, you will have improved 37%. That's pretty good. It's the small changes we make day by day that make a big difference in the long term. It adds up over the days and weeks to real progress. So then at the end of that cycle, you do the 4 weeks, and then we can go back through those 4 areas and repeat that work, which eventually helps us find the peace and confidence that we are seeking, but that can only come from God's grace. St. Augustine wrote, "For grace is given not because we have done good works." I'm going to say that again. Grace is given not because we have done good works, but in order that we may be able to do them. So don't make big changes, though. No, baby steps. In fact, don't make big decisions when you feel burned out either. Like, this is the time of year we have to make these big decisions about next year, right? Pause that. Take these baby steps first. This conference is in February. I love that they do this. Thank you, Homeschool Connections, because it's dreary and cold most places in the United States. There's not a lot of sunshine. We are feeling blah. Lent is coming, which is the season of sacrifice. So we look forward to it, but also, it's not very exciting and positive. The end of the school year is not close enough, right? And yet we have to already start thinking about next year because classes are coming open and co-ops registrations are being announced, and we have to start figuring that out. So it pulls us down, right? We just can't underestimate the reality that the weather, kind of the ongoing illnesses that everybody's been passing around really do bring us down. In fact, a friend of mine told me recently that when she was in Australia in August, she hit major burnout, right? Because the seasons are flipped. So it's easy to get caught up in all the amazing things we could do to make what's not going well right now better. And we do tend to look for those quick fixes, like shiny new curriculum, right? That'll certainly solve my problem. But I can almost guarantee you that new curriculum is not going to solve your current problems completely. I always have to mention this because in my consulting and my membership, the vast majority of moms who come, you got to help me fix this. We got to use a new curriculum. We got to switch. And a lot of times, I would say the vast majority, 80% probably, of the struggles that we discuss can't be solved by new curriculum. So, yet sometimes we need it, but the solutions usually require improved relationships and routines. Things like meeting our basic needs and those of our children, to simplify, to plan for joy. There's just no magic bullet. We have to do the work. There's no unicorn which will make homeschooling easy, because it's not easy, because we are not perfect. Homeschooling is hard. It's a lot of work if we're really pouring our hearts into it, which I know you all are, you wouldn't be here. But also it's really worth it. Think back at the beginning to what you love about homeschooling and what you thought of. Homeschooling is hard because we take on the responsibility for everything, right? We have to make all the decisions and we have to motivate ourselves to be consistent without somebody patting us on the back or paying us a paycheck, right? And this can be an isolating lifestyle too. We have to acknowledge that even if you're surrounded by other homeschoolers, it's really hard sometimes. But homeschooling is worth it. It is. And St. Rose of Lima reminds us the gift of grace increases as the struggle increases. So there will be more grace. He will keep pouring it out on us as we step forward, as we keep going and we don't give up. Think about the homeschooling families you admire and why you admire them. You might not have a realistic picture of what they do and don't do. You see the things that they do and you admire. You see the kids that they're raising and you admire them. And so those are the goals that we should discern for our families, if that is a good step or not, right? Because each family is different. In fact, one thing that is beautiful to me in acknowledging that we are not perfect and we cannot be perfect and we cannot homeschool perfectly, like there's going to be gaps, right, in our kids' education. You know that. You can't teach them everything, as we said. Um, and I can attest to that now, having two kids in college, there are gaps and they're figuring that out. But it's also beautiful to see God bring them along through grace to learn those things, to fill those gaps with his mercy, and then learn how to deal with that and to handle that. So we are going to focus, right, more on what we are doing, what we're doing well, the baby steps we can take to climb kind of out of our funk if we're in a funk or to keep us out of a funk, not what we don't get done. If you don't remember anything else I say, that's it. We focus way too much on what we're not doing. But of course, most importantly, our relationship with God has to be nurtured. We have to pray. Proverbs 16:3 says, "Commit your works to the Lord and your plans will be established." So if we put in the effort to receive the Lord's grace through prayer, then the many things that we do, all the work, all the things can succeed by his grace. It's just essential that we connect with God because we need to remind ourselves, because it is so difficult, right, Kay? It's so difficult. We have to remind ourselves over and over and over that his grace is available to us and his grace is enough. And you are enough because he made you for this moment, for this family. So give yourself a pat on the back and a big hug and remind yourself to turn to Jesus, to surround yourself with people who remind you to turn to God when you need it and when you need his grace, because it's sufficient and enough is enough. Now, I have a few things Walter said I could share. I have some freebies I want to give you because I want you to carry this with you. I don't want you to just forget all this tomorrow. If you go to my website, to heartofamother.net/refresh, there is a freebie printable of aspiration prayers that you can post up around your house or slip in books or put wherever you want to remind yourself those little one-line prayers that you have to stay connected. There is a free do-it-yourself mom's retreat that is just a gift I want to give you for coming. There's a coupon code for that. And then if you're interested in the whole Battle Burnout Challenge, that's there too. But really, I want you to focus on the prayerful guidance that you can receive through time with Jesus. And if you use those two resources of the aspirations and the free retreat, that's great. And if not, then I know you'll find your own way since we all find our own ways. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Jenny. That was great. And I went ahead and included the link to the refresh page.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so you guys can access it there. So yeah, Lauren's saying you can see the
Thanks,
comments
Lauren.
coming in, the applause coming in. Yeah, I agree. Great
Thank
job.
you.
Lauren says, Jenny and the Sunroom have been a wonderful support for me. I'm so appreciative of their support and valuable resources and support she has shared and provided. I'm sorry, I'm getting lost here. It's been such a blessing for me. Love her heart and passion for helping other mothers. Yeah, and you were at the Houston conference just recently, right? So I
Yep.
think she was invited to speak there as well. So Jenny, we have her off of our homepage as a resource for parents, for moms who want additional guidance, consulting, that sort of thing. She's one of a couple of them that are there. So seek her out. She's really good. And yeah, she's got obviously a great deal of insight and her own experience to be sure. So yeah, and her Heart of Mother Facebook page is great. So I would encourage you to look at that. She's always posting some great things there. So be active in seeking those resources out because they're really great. So we did have a couple. At least I saw one question come in.
Sure.
And this is just more of a logistical question. Janine's asking, can you repeat the 4 points? I missed writing one of them down. So if you could repeat those, that'd be great. Oh, wait, you're on mute, I think, or something. I'm not hearing you. Is anyone not hearing Jenny?
I'm not hearing her either.
Yeah, okay, she's working on it, I think. I wish I could read lips.
Now can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay.
There we go.
I guess my microphone here went out. All right. Yes, the 4 points. Okay, so I'm gonna recap as well. Prayer and that mindset, right? First, we have to kind of change what we're thinking of. But the four key steps are mom's needs, kids' basic needs, simplifying home and homeschool, and planning for joy. So
Great.
you can
Thank you for that.
those are actually in the Battle Burnout Challenge, like little thumbnails too, if you need to go back and visually see them.
Cool. Katie said in her, she had a comment, she said, thank you. All these talks have been wonderful. This last one was the one that hit where I needed it the most, though. Thank you, presenters. So that was great. So thank you, Kay.
Thank you. Hugs, Kay.
Yeah, that's great. I'm not seeing any other questions come in. Perhaps you did such a wonderful job of answering them, not only in the presentation, but also in the materials, you presented. Oh, there we go. One question did just come in through the chat. Sorry, hold on, where did it go?
Yeah, which mom's retreat, right?
Yeah, which moms you recommend?
Pick your free retreat. Ooh, now I gotta think. I have so many. They're so each one is so special to me and kind of hits a different place. I'm gonna say this season and going with, I really like He Restores My Soul, because it reflects on Psalm 23 and takes us through kind of that, a little bit of healing that I think is important for this season of Lent. Who do you say that I am is actually designed for Lent? Like I wrote that one as a Lenten retreat, so that would also be probably a good one. Third choice would be Pray Without Ceasing, because that's what I'm telling you to do, is that we have to constantly pray right now and rely on Him. So, I mean, they all have a beautiful aspect to them, and you can read descriptions there to try to choose which freebie you want. They're all special in their own way. Good question.
Yeah,
yes,
great question. Yeah.
Yes, if you go to that link, you get a free retreat of your choice. You can choose from the Busy Moms retreats that I have that are downloads and lots of good descriptions. Okay.
Great. Yeah, this has been great. And that is what a great conclusion to the entire afternoon, which is kind of nice because none of this was planned, of course, and which is kind of nice, Jenny. You know, you're doing a good job of incorporating the various aspects of the prior talks. And so I really appreciate that. And I think most everyone did here as well. So it was really appreciative. Yeah. Now, before we conclude, and I'll give, we'll still stick around if you have more questions and whatnot, if you have any insights you want to offer, anyone wants to pose a question or maybe a comment. But if, well, I want to stop. Let's see here. Yeah. So, you know what? I'll hold off. I was going to go ahead and issue the award, but I'll wait till the end. The end. But let's go ahead and are there any other questions that have come in? Anything else from anybody?
Or a question that you asked earlier that didn't get answered or didn't,
yeah,
I mean, it doesn't have to be about what I talked about. That's
true. There were a lot of questions that did come up that weren't able to get answered. So if anyone has anything, I would say this. Now I've appealed to Jenny to see if she wants to do this or not, but she's done it in the past. So I mentioned the Catholic Homeschool Conference once or twice before. Jenny's been a big part of that as well in the past. It's possible. We're still working out the details, and it may not happen, but it may. We're certainly going to have the what do they call them? The watch parties. Mm-hmm. So essentially, if you're wondering what a watch party is, it's basically an opportunity. If you know the online, of course, the talks are there and whatnot, and all the other events that go with that. But a watch party is an in-person experience where you and a bunch of homeschool parents, perhaps a bunch of moms, get together. They bring, you organize it. It's very simple, very straightforward. It could be at a residence or it could be in some general locale, what have you. But you get together, you bring your food and whatnot, and you have a chance to talk about talks that were there, and you pick and choose what you want to listen to, and then you engage with other moms that are present. It's kind of a nice little a supplement, you might say, to the conference, or vice versa, how you want to look at it. So Jenny has helped us organize those in the past. So and she
Yeah.
did a great job with that. We may be leaning on her this year. We're not sure, but we'll certainly be organizing regardless for the conference. So just
Yeah.
something to bring
It's a
up. I wanted
great,
to, yeah,
they've been great experiences when we've done them. So
yeah,
I've done one almost every year that you've had the online conference, not the first year, I guess, but
yeah.
we and all of them were just at somebody's house, and everybody just one time everybody brought their own food, one time we did potluck, and then we just spent the day. People came and went, like, because the moms sometimes can't spend the whole day together, so it was just show up when you can show up, and we would vote on which talk we wanted to listen to, and I think we watched at least one of them live, and then the others we decided we wanted to watch the recorded ones, and we had lots of time for conversation and chatting about the speakers and the talk. So it was really beautiful.
Oh,
Highly
that's great.
recommend it.
Yeah,
Even if it's
that's
just like 2 or 3 moms that want to get together, it was really, it added such a great dynamic to the experience.
yeah. It's a neat opportunity to be sure. And we give you a guide to do that, right? It's not like you're on your own. How do I do this, or what do I need to do to make it happen? There's
Mhm.
actually a guide that you created, I think, that we worked
Mhm.
with you on.
Yeah.
To put that together. So it's really easy. Well, I don't want to call it easy, but I don't want to speak for that, it's high value. Let's put it that way. What you put into it, you get tenfold back, right? That's
Yeah,
kind of the idea.
definitely.
Cool.
Definitely. I would agree with that. That's beautiful.